In this video, I just want to take you through my journey when it comes to scholarships. I, like any other person who has applied for a scholarship from the continent of Africa, the scholarship journey has always been very interesting. It hasn't been very easy to get through and apply for a scholarship and even get that particular opportunity. And in this particular video, I just want to provide a bit of a background to why my journey may have been slightly different as compared to the others. And I also believe that there are people from all over the world whose journey is going to be similar to mine. I, like any other person, graduated with a credit through the government universities which are present in my country. I am from Malawi. Having gone through that education system, I learned a lot. It gave me the skills that I needed, it gave me the knowledge that I needed, and the level of resilience that I required. But one thing that was not covered was an issue to do with the process of applying for a scholarship. When I was applying for my undergraduate studies, all I was required to do was to submit the transcript of the grades that I got in my high school, and then pick the choices of the universities that I wanted to go to. There was nothing like writing a personal statement or going through an interview or any of that nature. And when I was now applying for postgraduate studies, and particularly when I was applying for a scholarship, I found that there were new documents that were required of me to submit. And this, to me, was very new information. I realized that I was required to submit a proof of English language proficiency. And this is something that was new because I'd already done all my studies in English, and I was trying to understand, why do I still need to prove my English language proficiency? And that when I went through the process, I required that it's not just proving. I really have to sit for a test where I have to pay a certain amount of money for me to be able to get that certificate. Secondly, I was required to submit essays for the scholarship. And when I looked at the essay questions that they were asking for things that somebody that has done some level of introspection should have had answers to. At that particular time, I had not had done any introspection. So this was an experience that was very difficult for me because, again, this was the first time that I was dealing with this kind of information. The last thing was a requirement for me to have a copy of a transcript. This sounds straightforward, right? But if you are in a country where that process can take between 6 to 8 weeks, it can also prove to be very complicated. But lucky for me, I had already foreseen some of these things because I thought that I was going to be applying for scholarships immediately after my graduation. So therefore, I had already worked on getting a copy of my transcript. So I went through the whole process of writing for essays. I asked people that had gone through the process, and they were very, very kind to be able to offer me the help that I needed. Some of them took their time to go through my application essays, and this is what gave me the confidence to continue making the applications. When I was called for scholarship interviews for the Chevening Scholarship, I was not really surprised because I knew that I had put the exact amount of work that was required for somebody to be called for an interview. When the time for the interview came, I also talked with someone that had gone through the experience. Mostly the main thing that I wanted to know about is how does the interview go like? What are some of the things that are going to be asked? And this person assured me that there's not going to be any new information that they're going to ask you, except the information that they have already been asking right from the beginning. So go through the essays that you submitted, go through the website, it will give you all the information you require. And yes, when I went through the scholarship interview, it was the very same information that was mentioned in my essays, and I just did, take an initiative to be able to expand on some of these things. There were follow-up questions on some of the issues that I had raised, and the follow-up questions were not really asked to trick me. They were follow-up questions that were asked for somebody to be able to follow, to be able to understand my story, and to be able to get a deep understanding of who I am. The experience was great. I enjoyed the experience. I could see that the panel was enjoying it. I also was enjoying it. So I was therefore not surprised when I was asked that I was one of the people that was successful in the interviews. But then there was one particular step that I had to go through. You do remember at the beginning I mentioned that I had to prove my English language proficiency. This is where things started getting more interesting. At that time, I had not yet sat for the test because it required me to raise some money and also just to be prepared. And when I looked at the entire process, one thing that I saw was that I needed to plan all these things according to phases. And I put this particular phase at the very end because I knew that I would require some money, and by this time I should have raised that particular money. I booked for the test, went to the test center, and I wanted to take where I wanted to take that test. Only to realize that the machine that I was supposed to use is not working on that day. And this meant that I had to postpone the test to a couple of months later, like 2 months. My deadline for submitting was just in less than 6 weeks. I didn't have that much time. So I therefore needed to make a plan. But I didn't have money because the money that I had already paid through that particular process, and there was a need for that money to be refunded. And the process of refunding for that money was something that was going to take, again, more than 2 weeks. I didn't have more than 2 weeks. I needed that money now. To cut the long story short, I started reaching out to people for help. And once I reached out to people for help, they were able to come to my rescue. A few people were able to support me in identifying a place to write my test in Kenya where I went to write. Some provided me with accommodation, others even paid for my flight. So I flew all the way from Malawi, go to Kenya to be able to sit for that particular test. And the only thing that I told myself was, if people have trusted in me, they have come together to be able to provide that level of support, the best thing that I can do to pay them back is to be able to sit for this particular test and to get the best grades that any individual can get. And I did just that. So I passed, I came back, I submitted the required documentation, and just like that, I moved from being a conditional offer student to being somebody with that conditional offer. The rest of the things that happened were just minor things, saying goodbye to people, and eventually I found myself in the UK. The reason why I share this story is not to scare you. The reason why I share it is to encourage you, first of all, that it is very possible that even though you come from a country where the education system is slightly different, information about scholarship is not readily available, you also can apply for a scholarship. And you can be able to make it. Not just apply, but you can be able to make it. The second reason why I share this is you have to be able to plan. Clearly from my story, what I've shared with you, you can see that I'm somebody who thought I'd planned things thoroughly, but I'd left certain important things to the very last minute. And when things went haywire, I struggled to be able to go through and manage that particular process. It was just by grace that people were able to come through to be able to support me. But I always imagined what would have happened if somebody or people didn't come through to be able to help me. That would have meant that I'm not going to get this particular scholarship. So I've put together all that particular work, and I just have this particular one step that I have to go through, and I was going to fail by that. And the last thing that I use to tell this story is that when you're applying for these opportunities, you really need to have faith in yourself. You really need to have faith in your capabilities. You really need to believe that one day you also can get a scholarship. And this is why in all the series that I've been doing and I will continue to be doing, I'm talking about scholarship. I want you to know that I'm not somebody who is just reading these materials. I'm somebody that has gone through the particular process of applying for scholarship. I know what it means to sit down and write personal statements. I know what it means to sit down and write essays, 4 essays or more, when you come from a system where the application for your undergraduate studies didn't demand for that. I do understand the frustration with sitting for an English language proficiency test when you come from a country where you have been using English as a mode of communication for more than 12 years. I do understand that frustration. So I wish you all the best as you guys are going to be applying, and I ask you to walk with me in this particular journey as I'm sharing with you all the information that you need to be able also one day to come and share a video like I have done, where you're able to say, look, there was a time that I was not applying for scholarship. I went through this particular process. I applied for a scholarship, and now I am studying at University X. I wish you all the best and see you in my next videos.